You know, in our hyper-connected world, we're bumping into different cultures and ideas more than ever before. But does just seeing something mean we actually understand it? Today, we're going to dig into the very foundations of culture and identity to figure that out.
So, I want to start with a really simple but also really hard question. Who are you? Just take a second. What's the first thing that pops into your head? Is it your job? Maybe your family? A hobby you love?
Whatever you just thought of, here's the fascinating part. That answer isn't set in stone. It's not some final goal you reach. Identity is a lifelong process. It's about figuring out who you were, who you are right now, and who you're on your way to becoming.
Okay, to really get a handle on that ever-changing answer, it helps to have a framework. So let's break down identity into 3 basic layers that work together to make you, well, you.
First up is your personal identity. This is all the stuff that's uniquely you, right? It's your personal interests, your hobbies, the things you've been through. Maybe you're obsessed with puzzles, or you're a huge hip-hop fan, or you love to cycle. This layer can change pretty often as you find new passions.
Next, we have social identity. This layer comes from the groups you're a part of, the commitments you have with other people. Some of these are choices, like joining a soccer team or a book club, and some aren't, like the family you're born into. These tend to stick around a bit longer because they involve a whole community.
And that brings us to the third and final layer, cultural identity. This one's the broadest, and usually the least changeable. These identities are based on big, socially created categories we're often born into. They've got deep historical roots, and they kind of teach us a way of being in the world.
So check this out. Here's where you can really see how these layers play together. For instance, being a dog lover, that's a personal identity. But when you join the Humane Society, that personal interest suddenly becomes a social identity. It connects you to other people. And that can even tie into a cultural identity, like being Irish American, which is all about a shared history and heritage. See how they build on each other?
This right here is a perfect example of social identity in action. When someone joins a fraternity, it's more than just a personal choice. It's a public statement. It's a way of saying, hey, I'm with these people, which, by the way, also says who you're not with.
Okay, so we've got these layers, personal, social, and cultural. But I used a really important phrase a second ago when talking about cultural identity, socially constructed. What does that even mean? Where do these powerful categories really come from? This is where things get really interesting, because a lot of the identities we think of as rock solid and biological, well, they aren't what they seem.
Take a look at this number, 99.9%. Any idea what that represents? It's not like a grade on a test or anything. Get this, that's the percentage of DNA that all human beings share. The Human Genome Project proved it. It doesn't matter what we look like or where our ancestors came from. We are fundamentally, almost identically, the same. And this scientific fact tells us something huge. Race is not a biological reality.
So if race isn't biological, what is it? It's a social construct. This idea, called social constructionism, basically says that categories like race get their meaning from us, from our interactions and our society. We create them. Now, why do we do that? Well, often it's to create order and meaning. But these categories can also be used to create power structures and hierarchies. And that's why they feel so real and have such real consequences, even if they aren't written in our DNA.
And you don't just have to take my word for it. We can actually watch this process of social construction happen. Just look at the US Census. Back in 1790, there wasn't even a category for race. Then in the 1800s, it was all about percentages of blood. And it wasn't until the year 2000, which is not that long ago, that people could finally choose more than one racial category. Our biology didn't change, society just kept changing its mind.
And hey, the very same thing applies to gender. We mix up sex and gender all the time, but they're not the same. Sex refers to our biological characteristics, chromosomes, hormones, and all that. But gender, that's a social construct. It's the meaning our culture attaches to those characteristics. It's the ideas about masculinity and femininity that we all learn and perform every single day.
So, if our most basic identities are this complicated and, honestly, this fluid, how in the world are we supposed to think about them? I think we need a new way to see, a new mental model that can actually handle all this complexity.
Let's start with this definition of culture. The most important word on this slide, the one I really want you to hear, is negotiation. Culture isn't some finished product that gets handed to you. It's a dynamic, living process. It's a constant conversation that we are all taking part in. It's never done.
So a really powerful tool for understanding this negotiation is something called a dialectic. A dialectic is basically a way of looking at two opposing ideas not as an either-or choice, but as a constant push and pull. It helps us find the truth and complexity that exists in that messy space in between.
This diagram here shows some of the key dialectics we're juggling every single day. For example, instead of seeing differences and similarities as total opposites, a dialectical approach asks, how can we be both similar to and different from other people at the exact same time? Let's look at a couple of these more closely.
Take the differences-similarities dialectic. If we only ever focus on what makes us different from each other, we end up with polarization and conflict. But, on the other hand, if we only focus on our similarities, we're all just human, we risk completely erasing the really important experiences and variations that make people who they are. The sweet spot, the truth, is in the tension between those two poles.
Here's another really powerful one, the privilege-disadvantage dialectic. This reminds us that nobody is 100% privileged or 100% disadvantaged. We all have a mix of identities that intersect. Those identities give us unearned advantages in some situations and disadvantages in others. For example, a white man might have racial privilege, but if he also has a disability, he doesn't have able-bodied privilege. It's complicated.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory for a classroom. These tensions are playing out in the real world all the time. Think about something like the English-only movement. That whole debate is a perfect storm of these dialectics. It's about what unites us versus what makes our communities unique. It's about history versus the present. It's a huge, messy, cultural negotiation happening right in front of our eyes.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground, from the layers of identity to social construction to this whole new dialectical way of thinking. So, what does any of this mean for you right here, right now? Here's the bottom line. Your identity is not a box someone puts you in. It's not a label that's been stuck on you. It's an action. It's a process. It is a dynamic, lifelong negotiation that you are an active part of, whether you realize it or not.
So, let's do a super quick recap. First, our identity has those three layers: personal, social, and cultural. Second, remember that many of our most core identities, like race and gender, are actually social constructs. Third, culture itself is not a thing. It's an ongoing negotiation. And finally, thinking dialectically is a tool that can help us navigate all of this beautiful complexity in ourselves and in other people.
And that brings us to the final question. If culture is a negotiation and your identity is a process that you are actively shaping every single day, that leaves one really big, really important question left to answer. Who do you choose to be?